The next person who I'd like to introduce you to is somebody whose life is the embodiment of second chances and giving back. He's a young man who came from difficult circumstances growing up, with challenges in his own family, and achieved great recognition. Bachelor's and a master's degree at John Jay, a law degree from Fordham, ranked as super lawyers, and had a very significant career. And then, because of the struggle with alcoholism and an accident, his life took a very different turn. Now, we all have suffering in our lives. We all have pain in our lives. But I think, as the bishop said and Rabbi Ganek said, it's what we do with that. And do we turn it to an opportunity of grace, an opportunity of awareness, and an opportunity of wisdom to give back to the community? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know another human being who has so fully and thoroughly committed himself to reentry as the person I'm about to introduce, who I have the privilege of working with every single day, our dear friend, John Koufos. Let's give it up, come on!
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor McGreevey. Thank you not just for your kind words, but for giving me this opportunity with Mayor Fulop and the JSEP board and the New Jersey Reentry Corporation board. You know, it's a miracle that I'm really standing anywhere today. As Governor McGreevey said, I had a successful career as a criminal defense lawyer. You know, that didn't define me, although I thought it did at the time. What was constantly defining me was my battle with alcoholism. And when I say battle, I was essentially letting it kick the hell out of me for 20 years. So it wasn't much of a battle in the sense that I wasn't able to fight it. I've had the privilege of serving the reentry community first as a volunteer in February of 2014, and then I was granted the blessing of having this job. When you think about time, and I did mine at Bayside State Prison, when you think about time, I think just over 4 years ago, I put on a relatively nice suit like I have on today, and I argued before the New Jersey Supreme Court. A very complex search and seizure case. For any lawyer, especially in his mid-30s, this would have sort of been the capstone to, you know, it's the place you want to be as a criminal defense lawyer. And I argued that case, and in a different time, again, it would have been something to feed my ego. But the most unique thing about 4 years ago when I argued that case is that I did it while I was out on a $150,000 bail and under indictment. So I argued that case, and that was the last case of my career for all intents and purposes. 2 months later, I would plead guilty. And I would plead guilty to crimes related to my addiction and unchecked post-traumatic stress disorder and other issues that I had not resolved for my entire life. I had hurt an innocent person quite badly at the time in a drunk driving accident, and then tried to lie my way out of it. And for that, I was sentenced to 6 years in state prison. So 4 years ago, I argued before the Supreme Court. 2 months later, I plead guilty. 2 months later, I traded my lawyer suit in for a jumpsuit as an inmate. And one would think the most significant part of when I pled guilty was the fact that I pled guilty. But in fact, you know, by the grace of God, the most important reason, the most important thing that occurred on the day that I pled guilty was it was finally my last relapse. And from that point forward, I've been blessed, you know, working various programs with sobriety. And as I sat in prison, I started to get a perspective that I never had. I saw my clients, obviously, in a far different way, as I lived among them and forever will be someone with a record like we see in many of us in this room. And when you're sitting in a cell, you know, you think about a lot. And I thought that I had it all prior to the accident. I really did. I owned a firm, certified criminal trial lawyer, super lawyer, the things Governor McGreevey mentioned. But all those were ways to hide, and ways to hide my alcoholism and the stress of a childhood that would make some horror movies blush. They say that 70% of those in prison had a parent in prison, and I did as well. In fact, my father is still in federal prison. We heard Reverend Sharpton talk about, you know, the father as a role model. My role model consisted of, you know, beating my mother within an inch of death, beating me within 2 inches of death, and when he had escaped from jail, being dragged around the country for 6 years. So throughout all of that situation caused my teenage mother, also an addict, her issue was prescription pills, caused her to beat on me in ways that, you know, again, would be more fitting for a DIFUS case. So rather than resolve these issues, and had I resolved these issues, had I sought treatment, both mental health and addiction treatment, as I picked my first drink up at 15 and didn't stop until I was 35. My life might have been different, but far, far more important than that, the innocent person I hit's life would have been different. And by the grace of God, and by the way, you know, God was someone I sort of blamed for all of my shortcomings, everything that didn't go my way. But by the grace of God, the person I hit lived. And it was that day that I knew that there was a God in my life. And when I paired that with my program, I finally got better. But reentry is about second chances, but it's about, for me, it was about being in a position to earn a second chance. And I couldn't earn a second chance without correcting behavior. And I think that's what we see in our reentry programs across the state. We have a model that addresses addiction and mental health issues at the front end. And by doing that, and I take that very personally, and when I was given the privilege of parole, I said to them, when they asked why, you know, sort of paraphrasing, they asked why I would stick to my program, and because if we stopped the next addict, the only thing that made John Koufos commit crimes was his alcoholism and unresolved psychological issues. If we fixed John Koufos, we save the next victim. So for me, this job is about service. And everyone calls it a job. This way of life is about service. It's about atonement for what I've done. And this program keeps me sober every day because I'm blessed thanks to what I've been given to give back. As I look in front, I see Mr. Scott, who was profiled on our Eastern Millwork video, who was one of my first clients as a case manager. And to see his success gives me strength, and I thank him. So the question is, when you have all of these issues, when you have poverty, and I did, we didn't have food once my father went away. When you have physical abuse, verbal abuse, which candidly I didn't know was a thing until I went to therapy because I had only gotten physical abuse. And when you have all of those things and you don't resolve them, you're going to use. And we employ that mindset in our reentry program. If a person doesn't have housing, they're not going to really they're not going to be able to be fully involved in the other social services. If they're worried about how they're going or if they're going to drink or use again, they're not going to be concerned about getting better. And if they have no job and the doors of opportunity are foreclosed upon them, then we have not just an economic problem as a society, but a moral problem and a crime problem. Today, I stand up here, blessed. And while I wouldn't trade this job for anything, I absolutely would trade how I got here, having left a victim in my wake. And when we think about healing people, and we think about stopping people from recidivating, we have to remember that the addict we fix today saves the victim of tomorrow. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, John. And John, in his leadership in terms of our reentry and directing our Reentry Corporation, is also working to bring lawyers into our program. And now we have 56 lawyers through the Young Lawyers Division of the State Bar Association. And basically, we put on a similar panel with the State Bar Association every year to recruit lawyers. So again, John, thank you for what you do every day, and thank you for our lawyers.